I'd like to start my story by telling you something that I didn't intend to tell you, which was the day that Sharon was talking about at Quadrennial was 1986. And that was the day I met Sharon Watkins. I had known her mother for a long time, and Billy introduced me to Sharon that day, and Sharon had her baby boy there, and I was sitting up behind them. So I remember that day, Sharon, very well. The story I want to tell you today is something that happened in the shadow, actually, of that story for me. I was working as a pastor at Mallory Avenue Christian Church right out of seminary, and I knew everything because I was 30 years old. I was 26 when I started, but by the time I was 30, of course, I knew everything. And the reason I knew everything is I had wonderful mentors, and one of them was Delvon Barrett. And some of you would know Delvon. Delvon was the director of the YWCA that was housed in Mallory Avenue Christian Church. And she was really old, like 65. Like I'm 65 now, but she was old then and I'm not, I guess. So anyway, I was learning from Delvon, and she was running out of the YWCA, a group for teen moms. And remember, this is in the late 80s. No, yes, early 80s. This is in the early 80s, mid 80s. She's running groups for teen moms. And one of the teen moms was named Tapaja Dixon. Tapaja was always in some kind of trouble or another, and Delvon was always working with Tapaja to get her life more orderly. But at some point, she got a call, Delvon got a call in the middle of the night from Tapaja, who was using her one phone call from the lockup to call Delvon. She'd been picked up for soliciting on what used to be Union Avenue, which is now MLK and Boulevard. Tapaja called Delvon because that's who she could think of. And Delvon said, Tapaja, what do you need? And Tapaja said, I need Kotex, is what we called them in the day. I need Kotex. Nobody here will give me any. So I called you. So Delvon gets out of her bed. She goes to the all-night store. She buys sanitary napkins and she goes to the lockup. And when they won't let her in, she explains that they will. And they eventually do. Let her package go into Tapaja. So not too long after that, Tapaja had an experience where she got beat up by who she called my pimp. And so she was in the hospital, and Delvon wanted to go see her, but they wouldn't let her in. They said only family and pastors. So Delvon called 30-year-old me, and I went to the hospital. They didn't believe I was a pastor. Remember, this is, in the 80s, but I convinced them with my business card that I was indeed Reverend Cathy Wirt, and they let me in to see Tapaja. So I saw Tapaja and I said, because I knew from Delvon, what do you need, Tapaja? And she said, I need Christmas presents for my daughter. So I got Christmas presents for her daughter. Fast forward a couple of months later, and this man who had been her, what she called pimp, murdered her. And I have never recovered from that. I'll just say it, I have not. But I went to Tapaja's funeral, and her mother took my hands and she looked at me and she said, never forget Tapaja. So I've never forgotten Tapaja. I have carried her with me. And a few weeks after her funeral, I was going down Union Avenue, now MLK, and there was a young woman dressed to the hilt sitting on a trash can. And I pulled over and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And that sobbing turned to fury, just deep fury, as only a 30-year-old woman can have about injustice. And I called one of my friends, and she said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm not sure. So for the next month or two, I would go up and down Union Avenue, and I would write down the license plates of the cars